Good morning to everyone. I want to read from Philippians chapter 2 and verse 13 what the Apostle Paul writes to the church there. And he says this, and we're going to take this one sentence statement that Paul makes in the letter that he wrote here. For he says, "For it is God who works in you to will and to act according to His good purpose." Now, we've just heard, "I Love You, Lord" song, and may it be a joy to you. It may be a sweet, sweet sound in His ear. And you think about the beauty of what God is doing in all of our lives and how that works out, that God's purpose is to transform us, to change us, to make us people that have a relationship with Him and who we are, and He works with us individually. So I've entitled this sermon, Teacher of the Heart, because I think what Paul is telling us here about Jesus, about God working in us, about God's purpose, is that God is very interested in not just teaching the head, but God is very interested in teaching the heart, the mind of all of us. And for us, as Paul has told them earlier in the same book, that we are to have the mind of Christ. And how is it that we develop the mind of Christ? Well, kind of the bottom line is, you don't. God develops the mind of Christ in us. We work with Him, and we rejoice in it, and we joy in the mind of Christ. But there's some very interesting things that Paul says in this one sentence here in Philippians 2, verse 13. For it is, first of all, one of the things we want to point out, Paul is saying, for it is God. There is the focus. It is God. Secondly, we find here, he tells us in this verse, who works in you. It is God working in you and me. And then he says more here, to will. That is, according to His purpose and to His plan, and to act according to His good purpose. So we find here we got the will, the doing according to God's good purpose is what he is telling us. And then we find here, in essence, there's this incredible involvement in God, in our lives by God. Now, the point of it is, can we appreciate it? Can we see the grace of God working in our life? Can we rejoice in all of those things? Can we act accordingly? And with God's help, out of God's graciousness, yes, we can. But it is a process, it's a journey, it's an adventure, and every day is new. Every day is new. We think, oh wow, Lord, what have you for me today that you will have me to do, to live, to be, to say, to act? How does your will play out in my life on this particular day? And as we come here today, we have a purpose in mind. And our purpose is to worship God. We want to come and to worship God, but not only to worship God, but also to build that relationship that actually makes us feel very confident, good, to rejoice in the Lord. And that's what Paul is telling them here as well. So there's a very incredible involvement with God in our lives. And of course, it's about the invitation of God into our lives, that we want Him involved in every aspect of what we do and who we are, so that we might delight in that. And we recognize that the instruction does come from God. For what purpose? Well, verse 15 gives us a purpose. It says here in verse 15 of the same chapter, so that you may become blameless and pure children of God without fault in a crooked and a depraved generation in which you shine like stars in the universe. Now, if you get out in the evening or early morning and you see the stars shining, you recognize what an awesome situation that is, what a beautiful situation. Also helping us to recognize that we do live in a crooked and a perverse generation. I mean, that is the reality in Paul's day. Is it any different today? I would suggest no, it is not. We do live in a crooked and a perverse generation. And we have to deal with those particular issues in our world and our lives. And the effects that that have upon all of us. And then Paul mentions this other thing right in the midst of this thing, to do everything without complaining or arguing. Oh my. Do those things. And I would suggest that we, even with God, that we not complain or argue with God. Because we tend to do that. We tend to want to have our way. And as Claire and I were talking here earlier, we have to reframe things and say, okay, Lord, I don't understand all this right now, but I know that the end product, if I will cooperate, will be good. And that it will be something that glorifies you. We sang the song, I love that particular song. Glorify your name in all the earth. And all that God does, and when we think about glorifying His name in all the earth, it also means to glorify His name in all that we do and who we are. So Paul tells us that. And then he goes on here, in that context of 15, he says that we shine as lights in a world. That we rejoice, again, he tells us, in the day of Christ. And we also find in the same context of what he's writing here, that our labor is not in vain. This is what the remaining part of this chapter tells us. He says, here, as stars, we shine in the universe, as you hold out the word of life, in order that I may boast on the day of Christ, that I did not run or labor for nothing. For even if I am being poured out like a drink offering on sacrifice and service coming from your faith, I am glad and rejoice with all of you, so that you too may be glad and rejoice with me. And that's what we're looking at in terms of what the Apostle Paul is trying to teach the brethren there. Help them to come and to understand. So I'd like to take what Paul has said there, and we'll read one other verse out of this chapter, which is verse 5. He says, your attitude should be the same. And the King James puts it, let the mind of Christ dwell in you. Your attitude should be the same as that of Jesus Christ. So let's take a look at what that might mean for us. And let's take a look at, this part of the sermon, I kind of got a section, teacher. And we'll take a look at some individuals who were tutored by the teacher and see some of the difficulties that they had, some of the lessons that they learned, and things that we can learn as well.
Our international audience can support our multimedia efforts by subscribing to PayPal, the safe and secure online payment option from eBay in the United States. Donations in the euro currency or other approved currency options are easily processed and received instantly. Show your support for Worldwide Church of God in Fairfield, California, USA. The Worldwide Church of God in Fairfield, Santa Rosa, and Modesto are located in the San Francisco Bay Area, regarded as the most prosperous region in the United States. We believe Jesus Christ when He proclaimed in Matthew 6:24 that serving God is more important than serving mammon. We welcome everyone to come and worship and fellowship every Saturday at the times listed on your screen and on our website, worldwidechurchofgod.com.